Hi, my name is Daryn. I'm one half of this channel, We Just Want You to Read, where we just want you to read. It is that simple. I don't really care if you're reading hardcore smut. I don't care if you're reading nonfiction or fiction. I just want you to be reading, and so does Paige. So today, I'm really just going to talk at you about a theme I've been noticing in the books that I've been reading lately. And I want to tell you why I really like that theme because it's really interesting. Like, I was an English major in college, and I spent a lot of time talking about books and like talking about them, not necessarily in an academic way, but like in a more detailed way. Like, I was looking at how, like, now we would call them Easter eggs, right? Of like, what was the intention about writing it this way? Like, what did that convey? Is there a secret meaning that we can understand deeper because it was written this way? And um, I really loved talking about books that way. I really hate this idea that even if you're just reading for the vibes, you can't think deeper into the material and like gain something from it. Because I think anti intellectualism, like, it's the death of good reading and good books, and it's why we're seeing a decline in publishing standards and in story standards because people aren't reading critically. They're just reading for vibes, which is a good thing. You should be reading and you should enjoy what you're reading, but you also need to be like critically thinking about the story. Like, what did the point of view, like the character that's telling the story, why does it matter what they were saying? Why does it matter that somebody uses a certain phrase that they didn't use before? I think these are things that like help us see the end of stories. I also, this is a tangent and not what this the theme that I want to talk about. I love the idea. Wow, I just really exhaled. Sorry. I was like a direct like thought to that. I did it again. Good God. Anyways, I really love the idea that like a twist in the book, you should see it coming. There should be like, how do I explain this? It's not that you should see it coming a mile away because that means that it was lazy writing, but like when the twist happens, it should all click into place in your brain. Like, a really good example of that for me was this book called The Raven Tower by, I think you say her name, Leckie. And the entire book, I listened to it, and the reader is absolutely spectacular. But the entire time I was reading this book, I was like, there is something incorrect happening that I don't like. I don't like what's going down. I don't like how this is going, what's going on. And it ended up being the like last two paragraphs of the entire book. And everything fit together so perfectly. I gasped. And I, to this day, I've not reread it because it was such a perfect first reading and it was such a spectacular book. And I recommend it to absolutely everybody who's the slightest bit interested in high fantasy. Um, because that last page, the last two paragraphs, they everything clicks into place and suddenly you understand everything that didn't make sense before. And it was such a good twist. Like, it was so good. Everything made so much sense. And that's what I'm like always chasing, that high of like, how how can I be so delighted by a story? And I get them. I've gotten them a lot this year. Like, usually I read like a book that is the standout best book of my year. So far this year, I have had like one or two standouts as the worst books, but everything else has been a contender for best book. Like even the nonfictions that I'm reading, like I read Miranda Hart's autobiographies, both of them. I read Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. I read I'm listening to I don't know if you can hear that. That's my cat. Um, I'm listening to, I'm reading, no, Pischetti, I don't want to hang out right now. Anyways, this is like what they don't tell you about being a cat lady and a reader is that like there's never a moment's peace. Like in your head, you're always thinking about characters, and on your body, you are always feeling a little cat claw like, hey, do you love me? Do you love me now? Do you love me more? Anyways, I'm reading Say Nothing, which is about the Irish Troubles, and it's really good. It's like it reads like a novel. It's so fascinating. I feel like I'm learning so much. So like even my nonfictions are standing out as like some of the best books that I've read this year, and then I've read a ton of really great fiction. But anyways, the thing that I actually wanted to talk about in this video, that was a really long introduction. Hi, welcome. If you're still here, thank you. And if not, I totally get it. I ramble about books. That's why I have a YouTube channel with Paige, because somebody in my life had to be spared. Yeah. Um, the thing that I wanted to talk about though is this theme that I'm seeing in a lot of the books that I'm reading this year, which is female friendships. Like women being friends with women and supporting each other, and like the ways that we grow, and there are a couple that I'm thinking of, like two right off the bat that I've read recently that I really deeply enjoyed. The first one is romantic comedy, and I don't remember who it's by, but I'll put it in the caption. Um, so in romantic comedy, the main story is it's like a COVID story, kind of inspired by Pete Davidson dating all these like gorgeous, beautiful people, and it's kind of like what's happening. And so the story is told from the point of view of like a woman who's on the writing staff of this fictional SNL, who notices it that you know that there's this like discrepancy in hotness or attractiveness, or in whatever it is between the dude and the woman that he's dating. And then she meets and connects with their musical guest and host for the week, who's like a country music star who is like super dreamy and blah blah whatever. And the romance of it was good. I really enjoyed it. I think that there was a lot of angst that I was surprised to see from a man writer who really understood what it's like what it was like to be like a woman going through the pandemic, and a woman seeing how the world works through her eyes was fascinating and lovely, and he really hit the nail on the head. And then the thing that stood out to me though is the female friendships in the book were set up so well and so beautifully, because I felt like they really captured what it's like to be adults who are friends who are in really different places. Like one of them might be getting married while the other one is trying to decide if she wants to get a house plant. And it just, I really enjoy, and they were also supportive of each other, and it felt so realistic to how women are friends now and how women are supporting women. The other one, which I just recently finished, was called One Star Romance. Again, I'm blanking on the author, but it was so good that I'm going to seek out all the other books that this author has written, because ultimately it's about this heteronormative couple falling in love, a man and a woman who start out like they have this great night. They're kind of flirty. She writes a book. He gives it a 1-star review. She takes it very personally, is like, I hate him. And it's them throughout their lives, like coming together and going apart and coming together. And it is so absolutely stunningly beautiful, because on the surface it is a romance book about this man and this woman falling in love, but in actuality it's this love story between these two best friends who are in drastically different places in their life. Like the main character is chasing after a creative field. She doesn't know when she wants to give up. She doesn't know how to ask for support. She's living paycheck to paycheck. She doesn't know, like, at what point does she walk away, stuff like that. And the other character is her best friend, and they were in college together, and she's getting married and moving to the suburbs and having babies. And And it's about, it was such a perfect portrait of how hard it is to be friends with people as adults. And I can't speak to the man's experience because, like, I'm not a man. I don't know. But, like, it was such a perfect portrait of what it feels like to have friends in drastically different places. Like, I have friends who have babies. I have friends who work part-time at a coffee shop so that they can pursue a music career. I have friends who are climbing the career ladder and can, like, buy houses by themselves and aren't living paycheck to paycheck. I have friends who have started their own businesses, and then there's, like, me that's kind of somewhere in the middle. Um, and it's really interesting how we've all come together, and we still support each other, and we still are excited for each other's dreams, even if we're not all in the same place. And I think that theme I've seen a lot in the books that I've been reading this year, not even in the romance books that are um like contemporary fiction, so they're set in the real world, they're like real world apply. Both of the ones that I just mentioned had like huge chunks of them that were dependent on like COVID. They're recent. One of them was book of the month. It was really, really good. But I think even in the like high fantasy and fantasies that I've been reading, I read a book. If you watched my mid-year recap, I didn't love this book. It was called Godkiller. Um, I didn't love the book, but even that one had an emphasis on friendship and why friendship is important, and building those relationships that aren't enemies or lovers. Because I feel like a lot of current fiction really focuses on like, do they want to fuck or do they want to fight? And there has to be this in between for the rest of us who are craving that companionship of a close friend that you love and you get to know so deeply. Um Anyways, I digress. I'm just listening to my cat absolutely wreck his toes. I don't know why. I don't have the answers. I don't know. Anyways, but even in like the high fiction that I've been reading, like I read S.A. Chakraborty. I read everything that Shannon slash S.A. Chakraborty has put out. And I read it all in like a 3-week span because I gobbled that shit up. But I started with The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, which have this amazing underpinning of like friendship and camaraderie between men and women. And it was just so beautiful and so well done and so carefully constructed. And that's a high fantasy. Or maybe it's a historical fantasy. I'm going to have to think about that. I think because like it's set in the real world, so maybe it's a historical fantasy. I'm going to say it's a historical fantasy with high fantasy elements. Okay. But then her other one was the same thing where it's about jinn and genie and like all of these mythical creatures, and there's still these characters who are trying to figure out love, absolutely. They're also trying to figure out friendship in a really high stakes emotional situation where it's hard to determine if they're in the right place and if they're doing the right thing. So it's a theme that I'm noticing in a lot of the books that I'm reading, and it's not necessarily intentional. Like I'm not seeking out books with this theme, but I'm wondering if, as you doom scroll on Instagram, you hear all about, and like TikTok, you hear all about like the male loneliness epidemic. And when I first spoke with a previous therapist one time, I was telling her about how it was really hard to make friends, and I was really struggling as an adult to make friends. And she said that's the thing she hears about the most from absolutely every single one of her clients, that like as an adult, how do you make friends? Because when you're a kid, you just kind of walk up to somebody on the playground and you're like, you look like we would have a fun time, and that's it, then you're friends. But like as an adult, it's weird if you do that. So there's so much more at play. So as I'm reading it, as not necessarily the main plot point in all of these books, but in most of them, it's this like secondary or even tertiary plot point. And it makes me wonder if absolutely everybody is feeling this loneliness, especially out of the pandemic. We were so isolated, and there were these beautiful moments of togetherness, and there was all this unease and all of this fear and all of this fear mongering, and such a great divide between, like, you know, what you believe versus what's true, and all of these things are happening. And it's really interesting to me that the books that I'm thinking of that have come out in the past, let's say 5 years, um, have all had this very, very intense theme of like creating connection and coming together and being friends. And it being like real meaningful friendship, especially being a millennial who grew up with like Clueless and Mean Girls and these stories where they're friends, but it's more frenemy than friend. Even when they're true friends, they're more frenemy than friend. And so it's really interesting to me to see that we all grew up and we were like, actually, we reject that. We are just like each other. We all are craving connection. And I'm going to write stories where people learn how to have friends that are different than them, and friends who are different religions, and friends who hold different beliefs. Let me clarify that. I don't mean that they hold different beliefs like, can gay people exist? Do black people deserve rights? Are Muslims okay? I'm talking different beliefs like this one's a Christian and this one's a Muslim. Okay? Just making that clear. But they can hold different beliefs, and they can lovingly call each other out when one of them is being dismissive. They can overcome obstacles, they can have hard conversations, and they can still remain close, lovely friends. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, is that it's a theme that I'm seeing. And as I'm saying this, I'm like realizing that all the books that I've mentioned, I think, came out in the last 5 years. And so I'm wondering if anybody else has noticed this, if anybody else is seeing this undercurrent of like true friendship modeled in media, whether it's through books or TV. Because I'm also seeing it in TV. Maybe not to the same extent. In fairness, I do watch a lot of trash TV, and it is a lot of old TV because that's what I like to watch. But I would love everybody's thoughts. Are you seeing more accurate and true representations of friendship in the books that you're reading lately? And if so, do you like it? Does it kind of bum you out? Does it make you feel more lonely, or does it make you feel more connected? Do you feel seen in the stories that you're reading lately? That was a lot of questions. So I'm going to leave now. But as a reminder, we just want you to read. So even if your goal is to read one book by the end of the year, read. Let me know if you want to do a read with me. We can like do a little, hey, let's set up the camera and read together. And no, that sounds weird. I mean, like, I'll record myself reading and you can read with me, and it'll be kind of like atmospheric is the word. Is that a thing? I don't know. Anyways, we just want you to read, so go read.